All right, let's talk about the average time it takes to dispatch. Medical calls take longer. There's a 1 minute and 30-second internal standard for some reason. At what point did you all ever meet that 1 minute and 30-second internal standard?
No.
Is there who set the 1 minute and 30-second internal standard?
That's a good question.
Okay.
It's something that my team and I have been looking at.
Does it predate your arrival? Or
Yes.
Or it does predate your arrival, okay. Is there any history or any time within the history of the agency that they actually met the 1 minute and 30-second internal standard?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, because I know that Mr. STATter refers to a 90-second, and I don't remember what he said. Do you have that there? Trying to think of the national entity that he referred to when he said, I think it's NFPA perhaps.
Stephen, you want to address
Yes, so my name is Stephen Williams. I'm the Chief Operations. So the NFPA back in 2013 did issue a revised standard for 90 to answer and dispatch a fire-related call in 90 seconds for, I believe it was 95% of the calls, and up to 2 minutes for 99% of the calls. These standards get updated every 3 years, and the anticipation is in 2016, based on the research our agency's done, that standard's actually going to be raised. And the main factor is because of cell phone calls. We get so many cell phone calls. The other that Director Green was talking about, some of those are pocket dials, but oftentimes if there's a serious car accident, a serious fire, we will get multiple calls on that incident. That's one of the things that we're hoping Next Generation 911 also helps us with.
So having multiple calls, does that extend the length of time it takes to dispatch?
It can extend it based on the information that's given by the callers. If we get, the first caller may see a car accident, and they may put the information in as there's no injuries. The next caller may call in within a second and put in information that there is injuries. So the dispatcher, when they receive that call, they're reviewing that information to make sure that they make the dispatch, the most appropriate dispatch based on the information they have. And that, the way we dispatch the units and prioritize the calls is based on our collaboration with DC Fire and EMS or MPD.
So do you all internally have a breakdown for the type of calls you get? So you separate out the MPD calls, the fire calls, and the EMS calls. You can do that, and you have the ability to do that internally, right?
Yes.
Okay, and when you break out the calls for medical services, can you or do you look at which calls are the ones that are the outliers that are having the average dispatch time hover in the 2 minute and 30-second range? Do you know what those are? Is there a pattern in the types of medical calls that would take you all up to an average of 2 minutes and 32 or 33 seconds rather than the 90-second standard that NFPA suggests?
We actually can separate them out by event criteria based on our priority dispatch. I don't know that we've looked at it to see which ones have actually increased the EMS number, other than the fact that EMS has increased.
So let me ask you, what's reasonable? What's a reasonable goal, do you think, or a reasonable internal standard, given what Mr. Williams, right, just mentioned about NFPA, and perhaps they're going to go upwards because of cell phones and things like that? What is a more reasonable internal standard? And do you all look at this 1 minute and 30-second standard and say, you know what, we just can't meet it, we're not even going to shoot for it? Or are you all reevaluating where you all are, perhaps to implement internally a different standard?
So that's what I was saying about my team, so that we have been looking at it, because we just haven't made that standard. So we need to look at it, and then we've been talking about it for probably over the course of the year, that we need to change or update our current policies to reflect the national standard, and so that we have something that's realistic to shoot for. We shoot for that 1 minute and 30 seconds, but we don't make it, and it looks like we're deficient, when in fact we are actually probably better than our counterparts in this area, or at least equivalent to our counterparts. And so we need to definitely look at our standard and make it more realistic and achievable.
And what I'd like to also know, and if you all are doing it, great, then maybe you can just shoot me some information, but what's been the problem? What's been the reason why? And I mean, you talked about medical calls and cell phones and issues like that, but I'd like to know if you've already drilled down more deeply into what makes your average 2 minutes and 33 seconds. So when I say, you can tell me right now that they're medical calls that take longer, but are there specific types of medical calls or specific parts of the city? I mean, is there more information that we have to be able to analyze and evaluate so that we can improve it and perhaps set a more reasonable standard and to better understand when we look at these numbers, we're not just saying, okay, we're not doing a good job.
Right. We can definitely drill down and provide you that information.
Okay. And do you all, I mean, are you all already in the habit of drilling down, or is it just something that you might have to do that's
Oh,
new?
no, it's easy enough to, yes,
Okay.
no, it's not a problem.
Okay. Let's talk about the Pro QA system. Ms. White testified to some of the glitches and errors that her members have experienced. Are you all familiar with any, obviously you're familiar with the system, but the types of glitches that she mentioned and the errors, are these recurring errors? Have you all had any work done, any concerns about the system right now?
So I meet with Ms. White on a regular basis, or as needed, definitely. And so she has brought to my attention some of the issues that she raised in her testimony. We have looked at it, and there's nothing that is a consistent or systemic issue. We upgraded our computer-aided dispatch. So let me be clear too, because I think it may be that it sounds like that Pro QA or our priority dispatch is the same as our computer-aided dispatch, and they're not. They're two different systems. So Pro QA is what we use to determine and triage, if you will, a telephone call. And CAD is what we use to actually dispatch that. And we updated our CAD system as well as our Pro QA here recently. And we did experience some issues with those particular software packages, and we have looked at them. One of the things I know that was taking a long time to log in, and we went into the back end of the system. And
Which system are you referring to now?
the CAD system.
CAD system. Okay.
So in the login process, it was updating. As the person logged in, it was updating all of the information that may have lapsed since the last time the person logged in, and all these log files it was going through each one of the log files, and it was taking quite some time. We have since cut that out, and I think the login process now is like 30 seconds, and that was based on some concerns that Ms. White brought to me.
Okay, and are there any other concerns that you have with these systems that you all are currently working on?
So the address issue, I believe, is not necessarily that it's clearing it out automatically or changing the actual address. There were some issues that related to the information that comes in from the address or from the caller from whether it's cell phone or whether it's a hardwired phone, is in fact accurate. It's when and this is probably a training issue that we probably need to go over, or a procedure that we need to ensure is being followed by everyone. But when you're actually trying to put the address into a call, they clear out what was in that came in through CAD, which is automatic, and then try to retype that information into the priority dispatch program. And at that point, there can be some issues and some changes because one goes automatically into the other. And if you don't clear out the whole thing, then there could be a problem with the address. So we definitely need to look
But
at that.
is that human error, though?
Some of it is, yes.
Okay, but with the one that comes automatically into the system, will that ever be incorrect?
Never.
Okay,
That's never going to be incorrect.
okay. So it sounds like more than likely it's going to be human error if it's retyped in.
And something that we need to look at about actually deleting the address, because we've been doing that automatically because mainly just what the information that comes up may not be the address that the person is calling about. So for instance, you call about your another person in another location, and your information from your cell phone or from where you're located actually comes up in the system. So it would need to be deleted out and the correct address be typed in of the actual 911 call. So, but one thing I know is that we can improve upon how we do handle those procedures.
Ms. White, she testified that some of the agency's policies are unclear to her membership and that there's a need for clarity. She also mentioned that employees may receive a memo or verbal notification of a change to specific job responsibility or performance standard, and that a lack of these policies leads to inconsistency in the application of policies and procedures, which leads to performance errors and overall negatively impacts the level of service provided to the district citizens and visitors. She was talking about not having any SOPs. How do you respond to that? How do you react?
So the actual way of handling a call or dispatching a call has not changed for OUC. What has happened here recently, which it has caused us to put out memorandums or statements in reference to changes, is because of numerous working groups or policy or practice committees that we've sat on with both police and fire. And as a result of that, one of them was a EMS task force group, and with working with the medical director, there were things that he wanted to actually have happen. And it wasn't an actual policy statement that we would change, but it is something that it changed the way we would dispatch. So we would, so at that point, we did initiate a memorandum.
Is there a supervisor or person who's dedicated to disseminating that information?
Yes, all the supervisors,
So there would be, every supervisor is responsible for that.
correct.
But there's no, it sounds like her testimony that there were things slipping through the cracks. And she said, for example, if a person's not at, I guess, morning roll call, they might not get some policy or something that was mentioned at roll call.
So we never just give anything on one particular day. It's given numerous days or numerous times in different roll calls during the course of the day, the first roll call and the second roll call. And then it's usually done, if it's something that's going to change something, it's usually done for several different days, as well as that memo is actually placed in the operations center on the floor. So it's not just verbally given, it's also a document that someone can read. And we have also disseminated it by way of email. But one of the things that, and granted, I know that we can do a better job. So one of the things that I have looked at is a new program that actually will help us improve on our policies. It's called Policy Stat. And we just recently had training last week about how it's going to be utilized as far as staffing. And next step is to actually, we have incorporated all the current policies that we have into it, and then we will look at the dissemination part of it and the training of the employees so that they can see all of the policies readily. And so we are working on that.
Do you all purchase the GTEC tablets that FIMS uses?
Yes.
Okay. And does FIMS transfer inter-district funds to you all to maintain, among other things, the GTEC tablets?
No.
Okay, so that comes out of you all's budget?
Yes.
In terms of where you all are with these tablets, have the repair work orders for the tablets reduced over time? Has it?
Well, that's a good question, because they have significantly reduced over this past weekend. I believe we only had 3 tickets at our help desk over the weekend, which is significant feat, because we were having at least 10 to 12 to 15 on any given day. And so, we're boiling it down to just like the G-Tech tablets, but it's not just the tablets that were issued. There were, from the login and not being able to log in to the routers, as well as the tablets, the docking stations that the tablets sat in. And so, with all of those systems, we've reduced the tickets this past weekend to 3.
Do you all anticipate any type of budget pressures relating to the maintenance of these tablets or any other?
No, but, our special purpose revenue fund
Mhm.
is what we would use for maintenance.
Are you all giving any consideration to implementing the mobile application called Pulse Point? Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk about that?
Yes, sir. So we're actually have purchased a different application than Pulse Point called Atris AED Link.
What is it called?
AED Link.
Okay.
And it's to a company called Atris. It's part of it was the previous fire and EMS medical director found it, and we met with him, collaborated with him on it. What it allows, it's different than Pulse Point, is since in the District of Columbia, many AEDs set behind security in businesses, what it requires is the business registers the AED, and it provides certain individuals' names who are trained and have access to that AED to be notified. So if a cardiac arrest happens within a certain radius of that AED, it will send a text or email to those people who are specifically allowed to access that AED and who are trained to use it. What that helps with is where Pulse Point, it allows for more of a citizen walking on the street. If they're near a cardiac arrest, it lets them know, and it says, hey, there's an AED located here, but it may be behind security like at the Wilson Building. So they don't have access to get that. But inside the Wilson Building, you could say, Councilman McDuffie's been trained. He's there from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. If there's a cardiac
Yeah,
arrest.
a lot longer than that, but.
Yeah, if there's a cardiac arrest, send him a text and let him know.
Mhm.
And then that will alert the call takers and dispatchers that somebody is with an AED is coming, and also making sure that the AED gets there. We're still in the process of implementing that program, and we're working with fire and EMS with that.
Would it require a smartphone, the AED link?
The AED, it requires, there's no application. It requires a text message, email, or a phone call. So
So you can use-
even your desk phone.
Either one of those 3 methods?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay. Could you use all of those 3 methods to alert somebody if they register with
You
all?
could. I think you put them in the order that you want them
Gotcha.
as you set them up.
Okay. And what is the timeframe? What are you all thinking about for that?
We're hoping probably the midsummer. Part of the process that we're doing is we're making an electronic process for owners of AEDs in the district to register online. That process is currently handled by fire and EMS, and it's basically a paper process. So
Okay.
with the new system, it's going to allow the owners of the AEDs, which are required to register with fire and EMS, that they own an AED. It's going to allow them to do that electronically. So we're still building in some processes for that.
Okay. I want to just finally just revisit something that we talked about earlier, but the average dispatch time, Director, I have the information for FY14, and, like I said, it hovers around 2 minutes to 33, 2 minutes, 35 seconds. How does this compare to previous fiscal years, at least as long as you've been there? Is this normal? Is this an aberration? What's the expectation? I know the 1 minute and 30-second internal standard is there. It doesn't appear that we've ever been close to that, at least as far as your tenure is concerned. Are you all still shooting for 1 minute and 30 seconds?
Yes, we're still shooting for, that's the standard.
Okay.
As far as, that's our goal. And so as long as that.
Is it realistic goal, I guess, is
it's not really realistic. And that's where we need to, but we need to assess and make sure that when we change it, that we have the supporting documentation as to why we would change it and what is in fact a realistic goal, and maybe adding on to that, maybe 10 seconds, but, so you have something to actually shoot for. I mean, why would I make a goal right now for 2 minutes and 30 seconds? That's what we actually do. So you would think that we would probably reduce it to 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
So let me ask it this way, and are you all satisfied with where you are right now?
No, we're never satisfied. We can always do better.
Okay, and are you currently looking at ways to evaluate what your internal standard should be?
Yes.
Okay, and when do you expect to establish a different or new internal standard?
So we know that we were actually shooting for probably the fiscal year, since we're already in the middle of this fiscal year, that for FY16,
Okay,
we would be able to set new goals, and with this administration, ensure that we are actually on par to make a better change.
okay, and if I were to look at jurisdictions in our region with sort of comparable size and demographics, would I see average dispatch times hovering around 2 minutes and 30 seconds, or would it be less? Do y'all look at other jurisdictions, what the best practices are, what the standards are?
Yes.
Yeah, I think one thing that you'll notice is it all depends on how they calculate the stats.
Okay.
Some jurisdictions don't count abandoned calls the same way. That's one of the things on the 911 side nationwide that's really lacking. And like the director mentioned, with the call, answering the calls is really the only standard that's out there. It's not how fast you process the call, how quick you do it, dispatch it, because there's a lot of variables in that. When we had the earthquake, for instance, we received several hundred 911 calls, during that time, and several fire and EMS calls and police calls for alarms and that sort of thing. Those calls may have been 2 to 3 hours to get dispatched on for a burglar alarm, because we had several hundred plus whatever else is going on in the city at the same time. So there's external factors and internal factors that make the number.
Okay, but shouldn't you be able to account for all those things? Like if there's something that is an anomaly, shouldn't you be able to account for that and segregate that out and still be able to look at what internal standard you'd like to be able to meet and have a baseline for being able to achieve that?
So yes, to establish the baseline, we would have to put in all of those variables.
Okay. Okay, all right. Well, I'll probably spend some more time with you all and probably come over. I haven't been over there in a while. I know my staff toured earlier this year. I've been there at least a few times, but just to sit with you and just better understand what you all are shooting for internally, and any changes that are in the pipeline to try to get a more realistic standard, but also to talk a little bit more about what is happening with the increase in the volume and specifically with the medical calls and why it takes so long in some cases.
Right.
I don't have any other questions at this time. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record before we
No.
conclude?
Look forward to you coming over to LUC.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate your time.